Good morning everyone, and for those of you who are with us, we are sitting in the 3.5 million hectare Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, 2.2 million hectares of which is the Kruger National Park, 60,000 hectares of which is the Sabi Sands, and a small portion of that is where we're going to be exploring this morning at Djuma. We are WildEarthTV, and behind the camera we have Brian, who is trussed up like a Michelin man. We also have Scott, who's relearning how to use the camera, because Brian has decided selfishly that he needs a holiday after 3 months without a break. Then on the other vehicle we have the inimitable Brent and Andrew, who is also looking like Freddie Mercury for some reason this morning. And in the control room we have Eugene and Nikki, and out here we have the wonders of the African wilderness, and that's what we're going to try and showcase to you today. Brent is following up on some lion calls that we heard early this morning, and they're quite far north of the reserve we're on, so we might be lucky with them. We're going to head off to the east of the reserve, to one of the water holes, simply because we're hoping to pick up some tracks perhaps of a female leopard or a male leopard. We did have tracks or alarm calls last night from some impala, so we're hoping there's some leopard in the area, but you never know what will happen. Maybe not a lot, and maybe all sorts of things. So as we go, you're very welcome. We're very happy to have you with us. Google apparently said the temperature today was 61 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 degrees centigrade. This is a flagrant untruth. It is in fact about minus 350 degrees Fahrenheit. We are on our way. Let's see what we can find. The sun is just coming up, not where we are because we're in a bit of a depression, and the dawn chorus is in full cry. We've got some grey hornbills calling north of us. We had a whole lot of guinea fowl yelling to the south, and they were being harassed by an African hawk eagle. And please remember, if you have any comments or questions, use the Twitter handle #SafariLive or the email questions@WildEarth.tv. There. See that, Brian? Something came out of the tree there. No, not out of the tree. It's a duiker. It's gone, I'm afraid. Duikers don't in fact climb trees. They must have come off the termite mound on which the tree was growing. We're going to get to a high point here, and then we're going to turn off and listen to a bit of the dawn chorus, and you can have a look at the sun coming up. It's a quintessential African theme. It would seem that Brent has not managed to find the tracks of the lions, so he's going to follow up on Shadow and her cub from last night, and we'll continue this way and see if we don't find anything crossing into the reserve. Now I feel the air starting to warm up to around 61 degrees, and that's because of what we call katabatic flow, which is the flow of air up and down slopes depending on the heat. I can just see the sun peeping up over there. Rather glorious sight. Gently get us gets to a spot, say when, Brian? How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to try and have a listen now, and I'll tell you about what I can hear. Got a little firefinch calling off to the left. A Cape turtle dove saying, work harder, to the north. Southern black tit. Bzz, 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 bzz. Beautiful black-headed oriole in the distance. Black-crowned chagra. That was me, not the chagra. So all around there's a sense of expectation and a sense of freshness of the new day. And like I've said to you before, one of the joys of being out here is the smell of the bush, which unfortunately we can't transfer to you just yet with the limitations of our technology. But there's a very fresh earthy smell and a really nice feeling of the warm air coming off the sun already. Brian, can you try and get that bird over there?
Yeah.
On the tree, just in front of us. I don't know how long you'll stay there. What is that? Tiny little thing. All puffed out, I can't actually identify it in this light. Well, I'm going to use the light as an excuse. Binoculars are misting up. He's a tiny little thing and he's puffed out as it's freezing cold, so he's trapping as much air as he can underneath his... he's gone. Underneath his feathers. Alright, so we'll carry on. It's enough to warm the soul, isn't it? So now as we head down into the dip, the temperature is going to drop. And you'll see the camera start to shake as Brian starts to shake with cold. What we call shivering thermogenesis. So one thing I've noticed since being on this reserve is that there is an abundance of scrub hare. Every morning their tracks cover the road. And as you know, the roads, because there's no activity on them at night from human beings, they tell the story of the night. And, you know, they provide all sorts of indicators of what went on. We've had buffalo crossing today, we've had the odd rhino track, we've had scrub hares, all of which have made their way around in the night time because for them they feel less threatened then. ear down in the drainage lines here to see if we can hear. Drainage lines.
Hey, fam.
Morning, everyone. Welcome on the Sunrise Safari. My name's Brent, and I've got Andrew on camera with me, and I'm sure James did all the other introductions. Very chilly this morning. We heard lions calling to the northwest just before 6 a.m. this morning, but unfortunately, I thought they might be a bit further than our boundary, and they were. So we checked the road around there, and unfortunately no tracks, so I think they are further north than us. So we're busy checking this area around Impala Plains at the moment, just looking for tracks, listening to see what's out there. Hopefully we have some luck in this area. If not, our plan is we might move into Arethusa for a bit this morning and see what's happening there. Well, anyway, let's get going.
Look here. Make sure nothing's snuck past us. Just hyena tracks. Quick look on the other side. And just emerald spotted wood dove tracks. Very crisp morning. See, we're working these short grass areas on the seep lines. Wherever you see very short grass like this, it means that there's water moving, or actually, and these trees, there's water moving under the ground. So you have good quality grasses. So you generally have a lot of grazers in this area, and where there's a lot of food, there's a lot of things that eat the food. So always a good area to look for predators. Oh, there's that lilac-breasted roller up in the tree, catching the first rays of the sun. Oh. Off he goes. Don't think there's much warmth in that just yet. Lovely soft light. Sun's just peeking up over the horizon behind us, creating this very beautiful light and almost pastel colors in the sky. Oh, isn't that pretty? Male kudu. Where is he off to? Just going to move forward. There we can see him through the bush. Maybe a bit further back. He'll pop up on the other side of that bush. Out for an early morning breakfast. thinks it's too early to be on camera, avoiding us. Magnificent time of the day. Just joining us, we are on a live African safari, and we're also interactive. You can ask us questions. You can do that by emailing questions at WildEarthTV, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Want to check carefully towards the big Balanites tree. If we have no luck with tracks here, I think we're going to start heading further west. There's the sun peeking through the clouds. Copy. Thank you.
Mobile station.
Okay guys, just gonna have to use the radio. Morning. No update so far. Just that there was an audio of Ngala in Buffalo, probably north and probably a bit east and north from the Buffalo sign with the Gari Buffalo cut line. So you'll hear the radio that Andrew has dubbed R2D2. Copy, good luck.
Central,
Hi Pam, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. Pam would like to know, are the kudu in rut now also? No Pam, kudu will breed throughout the year, so there's no specific rutting time. They will only go out to the female when she's in estrus. So kudu do not rut at specific times of the year like impala do, and wildebeest. us talk on this beeping digital radio from time to time, and that's just to communicate with all the other vehicles and guides out there to try and make sure as a team we can find you the most animals possible. Always very important to check these road junctions very carefully for tracks. And as I say that, we have a fresh set of leopard tracks by the looks of things. Looks to be a female. I'm just going to switch off and show you the track here. While we show you the track, I'm just going to listen carefully. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's go have a look if we can find the leopard. Nkonzo of female Ingwe heading north from Balanites Junction with Zoe's, north on Zoe's. I'm following up. As I was saying, these junctions of roads are very important to check because the leopards and lions like to use our roads as sort of highways, nice big game paths through the bush. So when tracking, you want to be looking ahead. You don't want to always be looking straight at the tracks. If I feel like I've lost the tracks, then I'll stop and look closely. But what I try to do is pick up the tracks in front of us. Just see where the sand has changed. These look particularly fresh, so I'm quite excited about them. I haven't had a really nice set of fresh tracks to follow for a while. I seem to have been a bit late most of the time. They seem to be moving in the wee hours of the morning. But these are literally steaming, shining off the road. Well, they were. Oh, they're still there.
Morning, is anybody well? Yeah, I'm on there. Where are you? I'm from the north, on Torchwood, and then south towards the border. At the moment, I'm on Central Road, with Green Yoni, I've done Green Town, Boundary.
So the tracks are still here?
Line Road, within the Matach Gate, and now Central. Okay, so I'll check.
I don't see tracks now. Ah, they're there.
Okay, copy. I'm also following up.
Andrew, keep your eyes open. Also quite a lot of hyena tracks on the road, so sometimes that can make looking for the leopard a little more difficult to decipher who's who and where's where. Yeah, let's have a look at the more closely over here.
Nations are moving along the east Green Yoni, slowly mobile in a northeasterly direction.
Just give me a second. I'm just going to jump out of the car and check that those tracks haven't left the road.
So all I'm seeing at the moment are civet and hyena tracks. So I'm just going to turn the vehicle around so you can still see me, but I don't want to drive back down there. It makes it much harder to see where the tracks left the road and to get a direction to which way they're going, so we know where to look next. I'll be back in 2 ticks. Still only a hyena and civet tracks here, so I'm just going to check a little bit further down the road. Sorry, she left the road over there, and I can't actually see where the exact track left the road, but her general direction was off to the east. And also, being a leopard, if we have a look through the bush over here, there's a nice termite mound, and I think she's probably headed to that termite mound to have a look, and then she might have continued on. So we're going to go around and see if she cuts back into the road. Otherwise, we're going to check the next road that's at the base of this block. So hopefully these tracks are really fresh, so fingers crossed. We're going to be tracking. We're going to cross over to James to see what he's got and what he's up to. Just a little secret, guys, don't remind him about how short he is. He's very, very sensitive about his height, because if you imagine when we did that giraffe comparison yesterday, if it was 3 me's, imagine how many Jameses it would have been.
Well, Welcome back to Wendy's Morning, everyone. We've come to Buffalo's Hook Dam. That means Buffalo's Corner Dam. Bit of an odd name, really. There's a hippo in it, which we're just going to have a quick look at. We haven't found anything spectacular crossing the boundary onto the reserve, but I must say the atmosphere today is one of profound peace, and the colours are magnificent, as you can see. This old boy would have spent much of the night out of the water trying to find some grazing. Obviously for the grazers this time of year becomes quite difficult, because especially after a drought year, because there's very little in the way of fresh grass left, and as the winter progresses we may only get rains again in November. You can imagine how when you look around, you can see how dry the bush is already, but you can imagine how dry and dusty it'll be then. So there's been a very little really good rain this year, and so already things are starting to look a little bit dry. He will spend much of his time in the water today. You can see him just eyeing us out through his right eye. Perfectly designed so that he can breathe, look and hear without exposing anything else of his body. If you've got good speakers where you're sitting, it might be a good idea to just turn them up and shut your eyes and see if you can absorb some of the amazing peace of this African dawn that we've experienced. Try and hear the individual birds. There's a grey-headed sparrow just behind us in the knobthorn tree going. Crested Franklin in the background. Right, so our plan from here, once we've finished eyeing out this old hippo, is going to be to head towards the eastern boundary and drive along sort of parallel, see if we can't pick up some tracks. So far it's been a pretty quiet morning for everyone out here at the moment. Brent, I'm sure as you know, is after Shadow and her cub, and we're going to let him spend some time doing that, and while we do that we'll go and see what other bits of the ecology and amazingly interesting things we can find here. There was a dove flying over my head, and so on we will go. Let's see if we can see that sparrow, Brian. No. Oh, there he is. Got him. Fellow up in the tree. No, that's the sparrow. No, that's not a sparrow. That's quite an interesting bird, and he looks like a juvenile. That's called a puffback shrike, and they make the following call. They go. And they're called a puffback shrike because they've got a sort of large white pom-pom that sits on the back of their underneath the wings, and they can splay it out when they're displaying for potential mates. Quite glad I don't have to wear a white pom-pom on my backside in order to get a date. Although, you know, one must do what one can. Kerry, welcome to the morning game drive. You'd like to know how low will the water levels get? I assume you mean in the dam here. This dam could dry out. I mean, it's not impossible. It's quite big, but it probably won't dry out. I mean, in terms of telling you how low it will get, I'd say let's say the dam would probably get to about half the size that it is now in a dry year, but that will depend on when we next get rain, and I suspect we'll probably next get rain, like I say, in November or October. There's always an expectation from September because the clouds start to build over in the west, over the Drakensberg Mountains, and we can see lightning going from the high points here, but often they tease us, those clouds, a bit like the politicians of South Africa, and we only get the sort of rains here in October, often into late November, and that's why the impala drop their lambs sort of late November. I'm just going to show you a picture of that bird and his pom-pom. You can see there's the puffback shrike, and that's the little pom-pom that the male will sort of splay out from underneath his wings when he's trying to attract a girlfriend or two. That's the puffback shrike, now called the blackback puffback. They keep changing the names. Highly disconcerting. So as we drive along, you can look around and you can see, well, you'll see on your monitor, you'll see that as the sun comes up, the color becomes quite obvious, and you can see the green that there still remains on the trees, but as far as the grass goes, there's almost no color left. And at this time of the year, that's not entirely unusual, but you would also have some patches of green if you've had a decent rainy year. It's always the best time of the day, this and late evening, to take photographs because the light is so much softer. It can really get very harsh during the day at the lower latitudes where we find ourselves. Tracks of hyenas from the night, and like I said the other day, they will often forage on their own, so you quite often will find a single track moving along, especially if it's a male. The males tend to go out on their own. Have a look at this knobthorn tree here, Brian. Scott. So as you can see here, the bark has been stripped off. This is an old injury, but the tree is surviving just fine. But in a dry year, especially like this, things like knobthorns will be at particular risk, because elephants will seek out the wettest food that they can throughout the winter time, and often that comes on the inner cambium layer on a knobthorn tree like this. And the issue with the knobthorns is that, unlike marulas, which have adapted somehow to their bark doesn't strip off like these do. They've sort of evolved with elephants in an evolutionary race, and with a marula tree, elephants can only take off small chips of bark at a time. But on these, if they get their tusks into the bark here, they can pull off huge strips, and they can ring bark the tree almost immediately, and then the tree will die. And they often also push these over to try and get at the last vestiges of green that sit up in the top there. I'm going to tell you a little story about this tree too when Scott's finished showing us the knobthorn. He's finished now. I've no doubt that you've heard of this tree. This is the buffalo thorn, or the Ziziphus mucronata. And it's a very important tree to African people from probably down in, say, the extent of its range is probably the end of the Eastern Cape, where you'll find it, and up into probably northern Ethiopia. I think that's as far as its range goes. In fact, it's mentioned, I think this tree is actually mentioned in the Bible a few times, so it probably goes up into the Middle East. Ziziphus mucronata. And the reason it's important is that it doesn't, it's an important food source, and you can eat the fruits, you can grind them up for coffee. But the most important thing about this tree is when someone dies away from home, there are a lot of tribes or African peoples that believe that the spirit needs to be returned back to its birthplace. And this tree forms a crucial part of that story. So somebody will go to where the person has died, and even if that person has been buried where they died, and they will go to the place where they died, and they will take this tree, and they'll take the thorns, they'll take a branch like this, and they'll do some form of ceremony where they try and sort of wrap the spirit into the buffalo thorn tree. And then they will travel back to the home. But crucially, what they will do is they will book a ticket, a spare ticket for this branch. So you might find yourself on a bus traveling through Zimbabwe one day with sitting next to a buffalo thorn branch and another person there. And that person has booked a special seat for the spirit of his long dead relative, and then the tree will be taken out and returned to the home and probably placed on the grave of the person that died, and in so doing complete the cycle of bringing the spirit back home. So it's an incredibly important tree out here. That's the buffalo thorn. And I've heard of people doing that from overseas. So if somebody from a rural area here loses a relative, and that relative goes overseas and dies there, they'll take a piece of Ziziphus all the way to the States or to Scandinavia or wherever you happen to be, maybe in Papua New Guinea, and they'll inter the spirit and bring it home on that tree. The belief being that the spirit cannot rest peacefully unless it is at home. Tracks of an unusual mammal on the road, honey badger. I had a girlfriend once who had the character of a honey badger. She was terrifying. It'd be fascinating to know if there were any trees like the buffalo thorn in where any of you are watching from that have sort of spiritual beliefs attached to them. Perhaps in North America, and some of the Native Americans might have have some trees like that. Lisa, you want to know, thank you for your question, good question, why is it called the buffalo thorn tree? To be honest with you, I can only guess at that. There are two thorns on the buffalo thorn, one hooked and one straight, so they look a bit like my fingers look there. And the curved thorn does look a little bit like a buffalo horn, and so that might have something to do with it. It also might have to do with the fact that buffalo like to eat them. Suzanne, thank you for your question. No, it's not too personal. You'd like to know how tall I am. That's probably thanks to Brent. Brent thinks he's very tall. He is quite tall. He also thinks that anybody who's a little bit smaller than him is very short. Compared to the giraffe, I am very short. Yes, that is correct. I'm 5 foot and 8 inches tall. So that's how tall I am. I comfort myself in the knowledge that Tom Cruise is 5'4". Plenty of hyena activity going on the roads. D, thank you for your question and welcome to the morning. You'd like to know how big is Djuma Game Reserve and do all the guides live here? Djuma itself, if I'm not mistaken, is about 900 hectares, but we do share traversing with a number of other reserves, and so our total traversing area is about 1,500 hectares. In terms of the guides, yes, all the guides do generally live on site at all the lodges. Certainly where Scott and Brent and I have worked before, that is the case, and that's because we take early morning game drives and we take late evening game drives, and we often spend a lot of time with our guests after drive. We have dinner with them and share stories around the campfire. And so for us to live outside the reserve would be very impractical. Some staff live outside the reserves, but mostly the lodge staff and certainly all of our camera crew live within close proximity of where we operate. something there. I'm not sure it was anything. Still from that dead log there. I think it was a Franklin jumping off. No, don't worry about it. Sorry about that. Simon from Australia, welcome. Not sure what time it is where you are. I suppose it depends where in that vast country you happen to find yourself. But it's lovely to have you with us. And you'd like to know, there's certain trees that animals eat sort of specifically or only. The answer to that, Simon, is not really, but there certainly are certain species that certain animals will specialize in, or that they will select if they can. So, trying to think of a good example. Elephants will certainly prefer knobthorns as the winter time comes. Think of the other browsers. Things like kudu and nyala and bushbuck will have their favorite kinds of trees when they're available. And elephants tend to be very selective. They have a very Catholic diet, which means they'll eat just about anything when they can, but they do select specific creepers. I've watched them walk through huge swathes of vegetation and pull out very specific creepers, probably dependent on whatever their nutritional needs are. Is starting to build a bit now, which is quite nice, although Brian still seems to be dressed up like he's about to assault the north face of Everest. See if we can't get a view here. Another question from you, if you're the same D, you'd like to know, are there any monkeys on the reserve? D, there are definitely plenty of monkeys, and also some baboons. Those are the two, well, them and the bush babies are the primates that we get here. And we don't see them that often in the bush because they're often hiding, but we see them quite a lot from camp, which is unusual. Or not unusual, which is quite comical. We had a whole lot trying to raid the camp yesterday, and they tend to focus on the camps because they're extremely clever and they're able to learn how to steal and get into houses and find food sources that they wouldn't get otherwise, especially as it gets drier. Now we're just going to stop here and look over to the west there. Get my... Now you can't really see in the distance. It's quite hazy. It's hazy because it's cold, and so the people that live on the outside of the reserve are burning fires for warmth and for cooking. There's very little in the way. There is electricity in those areas, but at the same time it's quite expensive, and there's probably up to a 60% unemployment rate in some of the areas outside the reserve. And so the haze is hiding what I wanted to show you here, which is the Drakensberg Mountains off to the west. And we call this area the low veld, which means low land, and that comes from the fact that it's probably only between 300 and 400 meters above sea level. And over the Drakensberg there is what we call the Highveld, or the highland, where we find the major economic centre of Johannesburg. It's not necessarily the most attractive city in the world, but without it, I can tell you South Africa wouldn't function at all. There are probably about 9 million people living on the borders of the Kruger National Park, which just sounds like a lot, but it's not when you consider the area that the Kruger Park represents. It is bigger than Israel and bigger than Wales. So in the winter time like this, you'll often find that the haze obscures the mountains, but at night we sometimes can see the sun going down over the mountains. Right, on we go. Had a question from Raisha which I'm not sure that I can answer, so I'm going to hope that some of you out there with your super fast internet connections might be able to Google it for Raisha and I. Raisha wants to know what is the difference between, or how can you tell the difference between a monkey pod and a long-tailed acacia. I think there's a little bit of a mistake in the question. Maybe a long-tailed cassia is what you mean, the sjambok pod or cassia abbreviata, but I don't know about a monkey pod, Raisha. So if you can get me the Latin name, or we can get somebody else on the interweb to give us the Latin name, that'll be great. So I'm just getting some couple of directions from my cameraman who has a better idea of the direction. Yeah, I've had an update that the monkey pod is also a cassia, so we were sitting in the same genus, but I'm afraid from the spelling I got I couldn't say it. I'm going to try and find out if we get the monkey pod here, and Raisha, then we'll be able to give you a bit of a definitive answer. Okay. Cassia petersiana. Let me get back to you on that, Raisha. At the moment we're now heading down parallel east with the boundary of the reserve. Ooh-wee. And we're heading towards another waterhole, but looking for some tracks as we go. Just have a look at this amazing community web spider here. Rather spectacular in the morning light. I'm just going to see if I can attract some of the spiders out so that I can show them to you. We'll put them down Brian's back. Now, they all seem to be very restfully inside their little apartments. I'm not sure how closely you can see it, but there are little holes here where each of them live. That it looks quite a fun sort of communal place to live. I found one. See if I can get him off. Yeah, he's a bit stuck in there. He's disappeared back into his hole, or her hole. You can just see here. Let me take this out. There's the shell of a beetle. And don't worry, I haven't stolen their food. It doesn't actually, there's nothing in it anymore. So what happens is that this beetle, hapless as it may be, has flown into the web, and what the spider does is that they'll all come out, they'll wrap it up, tie it up, bite it, inject their venom into it. And what that venom does, it's a very powerful enzyme, and it dissolves basically the internal workings of the beetle. So it'll dissolve the organs and the gut and everything, and turn the internal parts of the beetle into a sort of nutritious mush that they'll then come back late. That's why a spider will wrap up something like this. They bite it, wrap it up, and then leave it while the venom works. And they'll come back and sort of suck out the juices, leaving only the shell or the carapace as we've got it here. So this has got nothing, no nutrition, there's nothing in this at all. It's entirely hollow. And as I told you the other day, sorry, I'm making it a bit difficult for you to follow me. As I told you the other day, these community nest spiders tend to, when they're hungry and nothing has flown into the web, they tend to eat the males. The females tend to make meals of their husbands, which isn't very nice. But, you know, if you're a spider, you're a spider. Sitting on a tree that's called the caterpillar bush, or Ormocarpum tripocarpum. I try and say that 20 times before I go on air every morning. Ormocarpum tripocarpum. Raisha, your question, there are bits of hazy memory coming back to me. There used to be, I think that Cassia petitiana used to be known as Senna petitiana, which has got a yellow flower, and I'm going to check this up for you, but I think the pods are a lot thinner. I think they have quite a strong smell to them, so they don't get nearly as big as the Shambok pod or as the long-tailed Cassia pods. And I also don't think that the tree gets as large. I think it tends to be more of a bush than a big tree. But like I say, I will check up for you. What's this? Gerda, thank you for your unarachnophobic question. You'd like to know how many spiders could be in that web. The answer is not sure. I've seen, that's a pretty good size one. I've seen them about a quarter that size, and I've seen them up to 10 times that size. So it just depends on the web. That one, I would say, from having looked at the little holes there, they're probably up to 150, 200 spiders in that little nest. Did we get those birds? Maybe no, they've gone. Never mind. Bit of a bird party going on here. The slightly more arachnophobic question would like to know, how do we tell if a spider is venomous or not? The answer is, if you're out here alone without a book, you don't until it bites you. But we know that there's no actual way, not like with a scorpion, where you can tell if it's venomous or not, or how venomous it is from the size of its tail in relation to its pincers. You've got to know the spiders pretty well to know. Out in South Africa we have very few dangerous spiders. One is the button spiders, the violent spider, and the six-eyed crab spider are the ones you've got to watch out for here. None of them, I mean, they could possibly cause death, but it's highly unlikely. So everything else you can be pretty sure is pretty harmless. Some of them will give you a bit of a bite that will sting, but won't have any lasting effects. So some of our big jumping spiders can give you a bite, but it won't make any difference or won't harm you at all. And some of the most intimidating spiders we have are the golden orb web spiders that come in the summer after the rain. And they hang over the roads. Females get into enormous size like that, and they're brightly black and yellow and white and orange, and they look terrifying, but they're completely harmless. We haven't picked up any tracks yet of anything particularly astonishing, so we're just going to continue meandering down in a southerly direction towards another waterhole. There's a beautiful nyala. Bob, you'd like to know if we have any, I'm just going to move forward, Bob, if we have any trees that have seeds that are carried in the wind. The answer is yes, absolutely. The most common tree we get here is this Combretum apiculatum, or red bush willow, and their seeds, all of the Combretum seeds, are four-winged, specifically so that they can be dispersed by the wind. They fly in the wind. I don't know if you can hear that batelier calling off to the northeast of us. I can't see him. There might be a nest nearby. Oh, there might. I think I can see a nest. That was identified by Scott. I didn't know that, Paul.
This is where I saw 3 the other day.
Okay. Scott says he saw 3 here the other day. Batelier not being very confiding. Okay, we have spotted the batelier. So while we look for it, see if we can't get it in picture, we're going to cross over to Brent and see what he's doing. See if his what he considers a vast height is helping him. There we go. Awesome.
Welcome back, everyone. We've been checking this area extensively for this female leopard that tracks we've been following. So far, no luck, but I'm very confident she is close by, somewhere in this vicinity. So we've done a couple of loops around the area. Now we've just been sitting here listening very carefully, trying to pick up any alarm call. Even the tiniest bird sometimes can let you know where a big predator like a leopard is. Andrew's just going to show you now. The last tracks went off Zoe's Road into this area between Quarantine, where we're sitting now, and you can have a look in that
vast pile of bush in there. I went for a walk in that area. I found one track in the block, but unable to find her. So we came around here to the eastern side of this block, and we've just been waiting and listening. Nothing yet. But I know she's here somewhere. She's definitely here somewhere. And sometimes when you look at views like that, it's almost impossible to believe that we find leopard as often as we do. But we shall continue on. We heard a Nyala alarm calls just after we closed down last night near the Buffelshoek boundary junction with the Mvubu Road. So we're just going to go through there, see if we can find any tracks or anything else. And then I think we're definitely going to come back into this area a little bit later and try work it again. Hopefully she's traversed through the block, and hopefully the Impala or Nyala or Kudu or something spot her and they can shout, "Leopard! Leopard!" and we can get right there. But let's continue. Warming up nicely. Still quite cool, so definitely think there's a possibility that the cats are still moving. Ellen and Debbie, welcome on the Sunrise Safari. Ellen and Debbie would like me to explain paw size. Because at the moment, Shadow's Calvin and herself have a very similar paw size, and they would like to know, when does that change? Well, it is quite difficult. It also depends on the individual leopards. But I would say probably in the next month that young male's going to have bigger feet than his mom, and around it by a year, much bigger feet than his mom. So it's around this time, at this age, where they sort of start overtaking their mothers. And will make it a little bit easier to determine who's been walking around. Hi, Virginia from Kentucky. Welcome on the Sunrise Safari. Virginia would like to know, do leopards eat snakes? Well, Virginia, yes. I've seen leopard eat python quite a few times. I've never really seen them eat any of the smaller snake species. They tend to avoid the venomous ones. I've seen a leopard avoid a spitting cobra when it found it, but I have seen them eat python. So yes, they do eat snakes. And the one occasion that female leopard killed a python that was probably about 4 meters long, so I think that's around 14 foot, and it was too heavy for her to lift up into the tree. So she actually had to eat quite a bit of it before she was able to put it in the tree to keep it away from other predators. now we have a bit of a quiz for you guys. Let me just get into it. Yeah. Oops. So I asked this tree a couple of days ago, the one to the left, and there it is, sitting on top of a termite mound, which we actually discussed the other day, succession and termite mounds. How once the termite mound is disused, a lot of trees will take over. But the big tree sitting on top, there we go, nice bright green leaves on it. And as I said, they have a very bright crimson flower during the wet season. And this tree baffled a few of you guys for a little while, so I thought we'd do it again. So who can tell me which tree this is? And you can send your answers to questions at WildEarthTV or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. So often found on top of termite mounds, also around the edge of drainage lines and watercourses. So which tree is this? One of the big evergreen tree species we get in this area. At the little water hole in front of Gallagher Camp. See if anything's here. Not much happening here. Been a very productive area for leopards this year, so always worth having a squiz. Welcome on the Sunrise Safari. Anna Marie would like to know, do we get black mambas in the area? We do, Anna Marie. They are actually quite common. We're not going to see too many as it's getting a bit colder now. But yes, we do see black mambas from time to time. And they are one of the more common venomous snakes that we get in the area. Stop and listen for a second in the drainage. Not much happening. It seems like the leopards are playing tricks with us at the moment. Actually going to go check the hyena den this morning, but someone else has already gone there and no one's at home, so maybe definitely a plan for this afternoon. Just after we went off air on the sunset safari, Andrew and I heard Nyala alarm calling in this area. We came and had a look. We didn't find anything, so just checking now. Amazing how we go through cycles in the bush. I mean, how at one stage there was so many leopards around, literally couldn't drive down the road with tripping over a leopard. At the moment they're making us work hard. This is a good thing, get to test our skills. Done, Georgian and Judy, that is correct. It is a weeping boerbean. Well done. It took you guys a little bit last time, but you got that spot on this time. Very well done. At least I know someone's listening. We're going to continue to check this area extensively, maybe make our way back towards that area where we last had the female leopard tracks. But in the meantime, we're going to cross across to the man of small stature, James, and we'll be back with you a little later and drive.
Welcome back, everyone. Excuse the hushed tones with which I'm addressing you, but as you can see, we're very close by, just underneath a female battalier, one of the most spectacular eagles of the Kruger Park, or any protected area in South Africa. When we arrived here, her mate was sitting right next to her, and he took fright at the car and flew off, and she's remained here. He's just on a dead tree in front of us. The battalier is probably my favorite eagle. And as I've told the story to some of you before, they focus on eating carrion, but they will take the odd snake or reptile on their own. And their unique design with a short tail allows them to fly much lower than any of the other eagles or vultures. So with their short tail they reduce drag, and they're able to glide at a far lower altitude than, say, the vultures, and that allows them to get to the carcasses before any of the other birds, eat quickly, and then fly away. Their main competition for that sort of strategy is the tawny eagle, but even they can't compete with the flying ability of the Battalier. So they do sacrifice some agility with the lack of a tail, but they have the ability to fly far lower or glide far lower than any of the other raptors. Oh, great. That was extremely impolite. You can see from the back of the feathers that it's a female. The males don't have that secondary sort of white patch under the browny grey. And in flight, obviously, it's very easy to see. There she goes. Oh. Isn't that magnificent? Watch a bird like that fly. We're just going to try and sneak around the corner, see if we can't get a better view. She's quite confiding, so I'm going to keep going. The Battalier in Shangaan is Shimungwe. Most of the Shangaan words for birds are onomatopoeic, but Shimungwe isn't, and I'm not sure where it comes from, but it's a lovely word. And in the background you can hear a robin calling. Also hear some monkeys' alarm calling way in the distance. We'll probably turn and head that way. You can also hear the bearded woodpecker doing his territorial tap in the background. What we're going to do now is just, we can hear those monkeys' alarm calling quite a distance away to the north, and that we did find some old leopard tracks heading in that direction a little while back. So our plan from here is going to be to backtrack a little and then head north up towards where those monkeys are alarm calling. But they are quite a distance away. Okay, a wonderful sighting. The other monkeys there. Basically directly behind us there. Should you see a road that you think we should take, just let me know. Hold on tight. Lost me here, piece.